You, David, just introduce your name and who you represent
Well,
and why you're here.
I am David Bear. I'm here because Ms. Crowley
Yeah.
asked me to be here.
That's right.
I'm the chairman of the TDC.
Great.
Laura McCullers with Pensacola Sports, and Mr. Ray Palmer asked me to be here.
Great.
Tina Arroyo, and I am with Escambia County.
Darren Schaefer with Visit Pensacola,
Great.
and I'm excited to be here.
Great. Great.
Mary Henriquez, Art, Culture, Entertainment, also known as ACE.
Great.
Tish Patel with Pinnacle Management.
Great. And I'm Shirley Cronley, and I appreciate all of you being here. The whole reason we are here is to come together to find we have restricted funds with the TDC, but it seems like the restricted funds have never been defined what they're restricted to. So we want to come together and figure out how they should be restricted. We will then present that to the county commission, the board. We don't know if they'll accept our what we say, but we want to come together and have something. And I asked David had come to put us this charge to us, and I asked David to be here to kind of tell us how you envision us to do this.
Thank you. So what we have, the county has, obviously there's a fund, it's numbered 108, that is the tourist development tax fund. That is where those dollars, when they come in, they go into that fund, and when they go out, they go out of those. And there actually is no restriction on those funds, other than the statutory restrictions on how they can be spent. Tourist development tax can be spent. And so there have been conversations for years on how to best protect the county tourism by setting aside a certain dollar amount of funds in restriction. They are tourist development taxes that are restricted for possible emergency type use. That's never happened, and unfortunately, in 2020, March 2020, we sat up here and
Had no money.
and we had no money. The well ran dry. The revenue, all the hotels had to cancel their guests, and tourism dried up. And so there were industry partners who were saying, "Hey, we need the county to spend some money on tourism because it's really not that bad here yet. So maybe it's never going to be that bad, and we should be spending money." And we didn't know where. We had some money in that fund, but it wasn't restricted for anything. And at that point, we really didn't even know what was going on with the pandemic and what we were going to do. So the TDC had said, no, we're just going to wait. And there have been oil spills on our beach that just destroyed our tourism. And, and we have hurricanes where, we lose bridges and access to the beach. I mean, there's all these things that are, whether controllable or uncontrollable, are really injuring our tourism market and our ability to market, to let people know, hey, there is another route, or the oil's been cleaned up after a couple of weeks, you can actually come back, because the national news, we're just running, as y'all remember, we're just continue for months running pictures of images of the beach covered in oil. And so when the revenue dries up, we need to have some restricted funds. And so what I've asked Shirley to creating this committee to do is to come up with what are those guardrails? Like, what is the dollar amount that is a reasonable amount that should be kept in reserves for emergency use? And what are the guardrails on its use? So how can they be used? Like, if it's an emergency, what triggers the use of those funds? Is it a 20% drop? I'm just using examples, but for hypothetical conversation. But is it a 20% drop in collections that triggers the need for it, over versus the prior year, or some other metric? And if that's the case, if there's some legitimate use that triggers the need, does that go through the TDC or go to the county commission? Does the county commission just do a normal 3 to, majority vote on it? Or are we gonna recommend making a super majority vote, like minimum of 4 votes on the county commission, so that it's not, 3 members think it's a cool project that we should use the emergency funds for, and never really, because there's a lot of great projects that aren't available to us to know about at the beginning of the budget when the money is committed, and Visit Pensacola may have all their funds committed, and ACE may, and Pensacola Sports, and there aren't, other outside agencies aren't, just haven't come to the table yet during budget. So what other funds are available? Well, hey, there's this restricted fund, this emergency thing. 3 of us agree it's a great thing as county commissioners. I'm not one of them, but county commissioners, 3 of them could think it's a great idea. And 2 of them think it's a bad idea because it's not an emergency use. And so maybe we need tighter reins on that, stronger restrictions on exercising that option. So anyway, those are kind of the things I wanted this committee to discuss and make a recommendation to the committee, to the TDC, that then the TDC will vote up or down to recommend it to the county
Sure.
commission. And then we'll, have to see how the county commission shakes. They could approve everything except for the super majority
Right.
if this committee had recommended it. You never know, they have the full authority over the tourist development tax, so, within the statute.
Yeah. All right, David, thanks. Anybody have any questions of David?
So there's no money set aside right now?
There's a bunch of money, there's millions of dollars in the fund, but it's not restricted.
Right, I'm sorry, yeah, not restricted money right now, okay.
And we found, the pandemic was a big eye-opener, but hurricanes and everything else have been eye-openers too. But the pandemic, all of a sudden, we had to lay people off. We didn't have money to advertise. It was just a challenging time. And our partners or competition down the roads and stuff, they had money in their reserves that they never missed a beat. And fortunately, Darren, you guys held it together, and we
With a
didn't
lot of
really
help.
miss a beat, but it was challenging. And the other, Orange Beach, South Walton, all of those places just kept right on moving like there was no problem. And that, one of the things I was hoping, Darren, for us, if you, when we can come through this process, if you can talk to your counterparts over in South Walton and possibly Orange Beach or Panama City, to find out how they set their restricted funds up, if they have them, how they set them up, and, and so that we can kind of compare what we think we want to do, if they'll share that information. I kind of feel like they will, because usually everybody,
Yeah.
that's not a, like who you got coming tomorrow, that's not a, something that's going to hurt in competition,
No.
I would think. And I just thought maybe if we could get some history on what other people are doing, it will help us form the way we want to go. And even the same way with sports agencies that are like Panama City and stuff like that. I don't know if they put money aside for what if. I don't know if that is something that they can do. Can we do that with, if you don't spend all the money in a calendar year, what happens? You give it back?
It goes back.
Yeah, never mind then.
Or you ask
Well, and
permission
that's,
to roll it over.
that's
Roll
the
it.
policy, but
Yeah,
it can change, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
'cause-
we rolled over from fiscal year 2020 to 21, and nothing started on fire or fell apart.
Right.
Everything continued normally. So, and that was a painless thing to have happened, and it was good, allowed us to make sure we weren't trying to rush to spend money at the end of the fiscal year
Right.
just to burn it.
Yes.
Spend it, but we actually have it be used appropriately and really get a better return on those investments.
and when you roll over, do you don't get any grief about it or anything like that? Is there?
Well, it was the first time we asked to do it.
Oh,
That
okay.
Visit Pensacola and the Unified Budget as a whole had asked to roll over, and it really was just Visit Pensacola and Pensacola
Okay.
Sports. That particular year, ACE had relinquished quite a bit of those funds already
already to
to
help.
offset, you know, that 28% budget cut we had
Yeah.
to accommodate. So we had to find a couple $1 million
Sure.
with 6 months, you know, left in the year, and it's about 3 months of our marketing. So, yeah, it was challenging. And so for us, we had to cut staff. I
Right.
mean, we let go 5 full-time people, and what you lose, all that, you know, organizational knowledge, the historical knowledge, all those relationships. So one of the people that we let go is our destination salesperson, and just because we didn't know
Right, when you go
when we'd
back.
be, you know, if we had to pick a position, we weren't sure when, you know, trade shows and meetings would start happening again. So, you know, that was one of the positions. We trimmed back what we were doing at our visitor centers, and my administrative assistant was one of the people that was let go. And so now we're filling those positions back in, but you lose that, that knowledge base and all those relationships that those folks had created. You have
Certainly.
to start over.
Certainly.
And that's you change over at the CEO level, you know, that makes that kind of change. But any staff position that's involved in sales or marketing and that relationship development, it's tough. And none of my peers had to go through that. So
Right.
Destin was okay, and Panama City, they were fine. But, you know, for us, that was something we really had to do.
Well, and you're right, you do lose the knowledge that these people, and, you know, I think your destination marketing, was that Laurie?
Yeah, couples.
Yeah, I mean, she had been there 20 years.
20 years, yeah.
So she really knew the history and everything going on, but if you don't have dollars to pay, you don't have dollars to pay, and there's nothing you can do.
Well, the other thing we learned in that process is, at that time, the only organizations that the county could, let's say, claw money back from, or say, you know, you have to cut your budget.
Yeah.
Was the unified budget. Everybody else had pretty much, that receives TDT had already received it. So the museum
Oh,
had
that's
received
right.
it, you know, all the other organizations.
They already cut their checks. and-
Pretty much all got their checks already and cashed them in the banks,
Yeah.
and clawing that money back would probably have been hard. But with us, since we're on a reimbursement basis, we never really, other than the advance, you know, we're always submitting and getting reimbursed.
Sure,
And they can just say, well, we're gonna stop reimbursing you, once you get to a certain point.
yeah, and,
And that's pretty much what the conversation was.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that includes the Bay Center. I mean, the county owns the Bay Center. They have a third-party concessionaire that manages it. And they have a contract for that, but not a contracted amount, but they had committed to it, and they don't want to, they didn't want to shutter the building. So those folks, ASM Global had to lay off a bunch of people.
Right.
They dragged their feet on doing it, but then they did it, and, you know, furloughed. But the county continued to pay it, and then came out of another pocket of funds, the ARPA money, I think, I forget, to pay an additional $350,000 to them, to keep them afloat, keep enough staff there to keep the building up.
right,
Kept up, and so that stuff continues to flow, but the 3 agencies that are really doing most of the marketing they were all cut.
yeah,
I mean, we have an agreement. I mean, technically, we could say, no, we have an agreement.
right,
We expect to get reimbursed, and but I don't know where that really gets us. You
right,
know,
exactly.
There's no playing
Well-
ball when
Next
we're
year
all,
that
we're all into
agreement.
this together,
Yeah.
and next year it's like, we're gonna do
Yeah.
something different.
Well,
So-
it was a challenging time,
Yeah.
and we recognize that, you know, we all have to give and take during a challenging time. But if we had some money in reserve to go to, that's a big help.
May I ask Darren a question?
Absolutely.
What was the evidence that you saw from those other counties when you say they didn't miss a beat? What did that look like?
Well, as far as I know, my peers on the Panhandle didn't have to transition any staff. They were able to pay staff all the way through, even if they didn't necessarily have,
Jobs to,
well, the work to do.
Right.
And you know, if you're looking at Destin and Panama City, South Walton, those all have budgets that are twice as big as ours, and I think South Walton is the biggest. That's the 30A area. I mean, they're probably 3 times as big. But yeah, I mean, with the 5th cent added, we're truly about half now of what is being collected in Destin and Panama City. Those are 2 are pretty close, and we're about half of that.
And there's a difference between those counties and Escambia County. Those two counties, visitor bureaus are actually part of the county. They're not
Destin
independent.
is.
Right,
Panama City's like us, they're independent.
yeah.
However, everyone has different assignments and different responsibilities. So what they do in Panama City seems very similar to being like a county department where they may be responsible for beach maintenance or beach renourishment, or they oversee those funds. I mean, that's definitely the case in Destin. In Okaloosa County, Jennifer Adams there, she oversees beach renourishment. Even Navarre, Beach, the visitor bureau there, she runs the beach department. She goes, I don't know anything about this, but, you know, I got a good chief, and, you know, she has a staff of 6 that are taking care of the beaches, and that's part of her department.
And that's part of the
functional.
TDC.
Yes,
Right.
right. So now in Okaloosa, when I talked to Jennifer, because I did get some information, I talked to her, they set aside, they have 4 reserve accounts. So they have an operational,
This is Okaloosa?
yeah, Okaloosa County. They have a promotional, beach restoration, and East Pass dredging. So, East Pass dredging has $2 million in it, so they have to dredge that channel on a regular basis. Beach restoration, their goal is to have $20 million in it, and they're at 16 million.
Oh,
Now, again, twice the budget.
Yeah.
You know, they're able to say, we're gonna put 2 million in here every year for 10 years, and, you know, hopefully, don't need to use it except for every
Right.
10 years to re-nourish the beach. Promotional is 2.5 million
and so they have that in reserve.
in reserve. And operational, it says 35% of budget, which seems like a pretty big chunk on operational. But again, they're set up a little bit differently. So that could include
The clerks,
several departments.
Yeah, the clerks,
Yeah.
10%, the
Yeah.
counties
So
indirect.
it's sometimes hard to, you know, compare apples to apples.
Right, right.
But if we're talking straight promotional marketing, they have 2.5 million set aside.
So they were able to keep marketing, they were able to keep their staff,
Yep.
restore the beach, and dredge the pass. Okay, so, all right.
And they, well, and they're a little different too, because they do so much house rentals that they were advertising, if you, similar to like we were doing, come to the hotel, they were coming, rent a house, teach your kids from school, homeschool, that sort of thing. They were advertising those, in those ways.
Yep. So I think that's, when we talk about reserves, I think a marketing reserve that, you know, the 3 organizations, the unified budget, I mean, that's what I'd like to see that reserve cover. And, you know, how we fund it, where that money comes from, that's another discussion. But I think to have a marketing reserve that extends beyond that is certainly a conversation point.
Sure, exactly.
But based on what happened this last time around, you know, really the only ones that were significantly impacted was the unified budget. So that's where I would make the case for that.
So once the funds come to you guys and whatever you cannot use, that goes into Fund 108, right?
So at the
excess
end of
that's
the
not
year,
used,
at
right,
the end of the year,
what's
yep,
not
I
used.
believe it returns back to Fund 108.
Does it change how TDT can be used prior to it going to Fund 108? Do we know that? Like, does the restrictions change when it gets into Fund 108? Can the Board of County Commissioners now use it for whatever they want?
Well, everything goes into
Well, they don't-
108.
It's tourist
Yeah.
development tax. So
Yeah.
they can only use it based on what the statutory
Right.
allowance for tourist development tax is. Even though it went out and may come back as it's still tourist
Yeah.
development tax. So
It
that-
doesn't
the
change.
So
restriction-
the restriction doesn't change once it gets into Fund
Right,
108?
yeah, so you can only use TDT for certain things, that doesn't change whether, you know, it comes through us and we get some of it back, and, but that, yeah, that stays the same.
Where it,
But we have no reserve accounts, specifically earmarking funds for specific things. So we don't have anything specifically earmarked for beach renourishment. That has never been something that we necessarily have had enough TDT to really set aside for something like
Right.
that.
So we started this year, TDC put
500,000?
500,000
Yeah.
per year to go towards.
And I'm not sure where that's going.
Right, so I think that, I was just thinking that a moment ago, when we were talking about South Walton, that what we need to, or Okaloosa, that we need to consider that, like, what is that 500,000 going towards? It needs to grow in another restricted fund that is
I
restricted
would
to
think
beach
so.
nourishment.
Yeah.
So we set aside 500,000 a year now, or we
Out
propose?
of the fiscal year 22 budget. Yep.
Okay.
Are there any other categories that would be important to set aside funds for? You know,
Promotional,
Yeah,
for sure.
promotional, obviously. That's where my head was going until you started
Yeah.
talking about these items. And
Yeah, I mean, marketing for sure, because
Yeah.
that's what got cut. We
And-
didn't have the county wasn't budgeting prior to this year, they didn't put in the TDT budget, a beach renourishment amount. They were, in the past, when they did renourishment, I don't know if they were using tourist development tax at all, they were getting some federal grants. and
Yeah.
Yeah,
had
Santa
some
Rosa
other
Island
funds.
Authority was shouldering most of that.
Yeah,
So I think this $500,000 goes towards a commitment that the Santa Rosa Island Authority is going to make. But that just covers Pensacola Beach. What happens to Perdido Key?
Perdido.
right.
I don't know.
Well, and I don't know that for sure. The budget only says beach renourishment.
Right, so,
So it could go to Pensacola Beach or Perdido.
sure.
We don't know.
Yeah, and we wouldn't,
We can make a recommendation, but we don't
right.
designate it. We didn't
Okay.
at the budget time.
Sure, Commissioner
Yeah.
Bender could
Yeah.
probably speak to that, since I think that was one of
Something, it
It
was,
was
yeah,
his
it was
request.
important
a
to him.
request of his,
Yeah,
and
and it's a smart request. I mean, the beach, we've got to do renourishment. How often, though, do you know how often we've done it?
Every 10 years or so.
Oh, okay.
So it's 500,000 a year that's designated
Set
to
as-
beach
That's-
renourishment?
Well,
This
That's
year,
set up
it's
Just
not-
Just for
started.
this year?
Yeah.
it's
Every
not
year it's
a,
new budget.
Okay.
it's not necessarily an earmark, but of course, once you put something in, it's easier to stay in than pull it out, and then it can grow or change.
Okay,
I would probably talk to Chairman Burgash. He's replaced Commissioner Bender on our
Yes.
Okay.
CDC
Yep.
board.
'Cause-
And he covers Perdido Key, his district will be covering.
Covers Perdido Key, yeah, District 1.
yeah, because, I mean, I guess I don't understand enough of the county, but I know they usually wipe out at the end of the year, I mean, what you're using. So each year, we're gonna set 500,000 aside. Can that get tapped into for somebody else if they need sidewalks somewhere? Not sidewalks, because that's not a statutory.
Well, it depends on how restrictive that fund is.
Yeah, that's what
and
I'm
where
wondering.
it's
Yes,
going.
I mean, now it's just.
Out there.
We had designated and recommended the 500,000 for beach renourishment, and they approved it in their budget process. But there's no guidelines.
Well, that's what, yeah, and
It's like
that's kind
passing
of
a
what.
law, but then you gotta wait till the administrative rules come through to really
Yeah.
understand
Yeah.
how it's gonna work.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
somehow
those
we've
could
got to
change.
do that, because what's going to happen is, we're thinking 5 years from now, we've got, 2.5 million, and then all of a sudden, no, that got used for this or this or this. So somehow, that's what I was wondering, how do we know that pot of gold's there?
So let's, as a committee,
Uh-huh.
let's make that recommendation as well. If the TDC is making the recommendation for beach renourishment funds, that those are restricted for
Restricted.
only that,
Yeah,
that capability. They can go into Fund 108, but they have a restriction.
okay, and then they just sit there,
They sit there until they're ready to
Yeah,
use
and
it.
I'm
Yeah.
wondering if it's more like, at some point during this fiscal year, a check for $500,000 is gonna be cut and go someplace.
that's what
I
I
have a
was,
feeling that that's more likely what's happening.
that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
I mean, what I think would be better impact if we wait to get 2.5 million
Sure.
Right,
rather than 500,000, because it's not gonna,
yeah, I'm gonna do this
yeah, I'm gonna-
100 feet.
exactly, yeah, do that, yeah. It's just-
1 mile.
But, so that's where what I was trying to figure out, do we know?
So is that gonna be a motion to recommend to the TDC? or-
Well, we'll have to develop a total plan.
Okay.
And in that plan, we will,
Yeah, they're not gonna be separate motions. There's gonna be a recommendation from this committee.
Yeah.
The way I see it,
Yeah.
I'd like it to happen.
right, and it's gonna take us a few meetings to figure out
Okay.
all of it, how we're gonna come through on this.
can I ask him one more question? I'm
You have
sorry.
yours? No, that's
So,
great.
did they tap into these funds, do you know? In Okaloosa County, did they have to, and if they did, do they have plans to replenish those funds?
Can't answer that in an educated way.
Okay. and
I would
it's-
assume, because they were feeling the same thing we did, that they would have had to tap into them. And then they would replace it, because I think they have kind of
Probably saw the increase
an
we saw.
ongoing thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
increase. in-
Increase in collections.
Oh,
okay,
yeah,
okay.
our collections have been great this year.
Yeah.
Okay.
The reserve amount should be carried forward as a budget allocation from year to year, and should be in sufficient amount. These funds are also available for allocation in case of extraordinary beach maintenance needs related to natural or man-made induced events. You get this other one here too, so, so it sounds like, yeah, if they get tapped to, then the purpose is to replenish them. How they do that, is it at the end of the year, is it out of reserve? So coming out of fiscal year '21, we had $5 million more than what we budgeted for, because we budgeted for like 10 million in collections, which was super conservative. So when we collected 15 just on the first 4 cents, we're like, well, there's 5 million of not play money, but unallocated funds that would go into the reserve, and now the reserves, refreshed, but now there's, when you have money, you get, it's 100,000 for this and a request for that. We did something for the Speedway, that came out of that amount, I'm sure, and that's fine, I mean, that's what it's for, and those are good uses, those are the unknown
Right.
opportunities that come up that you're like, yeah, we should definitely do that. And you should always have some money for that. Do we need 5 million for that? Could we take? So let's, an example, if we budgeted on a straight percentage, and the unified budget's been receiving 65% of what's been collected historically in the past, we received about 65%. So if you took 65% of that 5 million that we would have received had we not just, set a budget and that's what you live with,
Right.
that's, I don't know, it's like 3.5 million out of 5. Could have put that in a reserve fund for marketing.
Exactly, which would have been great.
And then the other 35% is there for the county to use for any and all, appropriate uses.
And in addition to, hopefully, there's an audit that the state will be doing.
Yep.
And I know we're kind of questionable on some of the expenditures that are used out of TDC funds. And hopefully that audit will spell it out a little clearer if these funds are things that, and it's just the way you interpret it. And the county staff is interpreted one way, and we, as collectors, interpret a different way. So hopefully that will give us some guidance too, and some guidance to the county as to that is not a legitimate expense, or yes, it tells us that it is a legitimate expense. And I think we'll have a better feel when that happens. Yes. So, but we don't know when that will happen, but that will put some clarity to expenditures
Sure.
of that. You get 65% of that other 35% that is being used for whatever.
So, I mean, that's one way to fund something like that is, okay, so at the end of the year, if collections exceed the budgeted goal, then take a portion of that, because it's currently not allocated for
Right.
anything, and use that, a portion of it, maybe not all of it, but a portion of it to start
Start the
funding that
reserves.
reserve.
I agree.
Because we could have easily, the county could have easily, my recommendation was more than 10 million, but we could have budgeted 12 million. And we still would have beaten it by 3.
Right.
But, we do our budgets pretty far in advance. So we
Right,
start
right,
talking
right.
about it in March,
Right.
for something that happens 6 months later, and of course, in these kind of times, a lot
Sure.
can change.
Sure.
So, I understand being conservative. I was happy that, about this time last year, we said, listen, we can't, they were talking about doing 10 million again. I'm like, oh, please, let's,
Yeah.
let's look at the numbers, let's watch, and, I think we were trying to encourage it to be more like 12.3 million, similar to what happened in 2019, and then we kept continuing to exceed those numbers. So, but that's kind of how this budget for fiscal year '22 was developed. It was kind of based on 2019 numbers. It was 12.3, and then if on 5 cents, it'd be more like 15, something like that, yeah.
What is the 5th cent, and I remember, what is the restrictions on it? Do you know?
Same as the 4th cent.
Oh, it is? Okay,
Yeah, 5th is the same as the 4th.
okay.
And so the 5th cent, and that's, unique in the sense that when the 5th cent was enacted, starting April 1st, the Board of County Commissioners committed to allocating those funds for the first 12 months to the unified budget.
Right.
So we cross over a fiscal year, so 5 of those months were in fiscal year '21, and the other 7 are in this
Oh, okay.
year. Okay? And it's not a budget amount, it's an actual amount. So there's a difference. So we collected 2.5 through the first 5 months, and those were some really good months.
Yes, yes.
So we, I think, initially asked for some of that money, just to make sure nobody forgot about
Right.
that commitment. So we asked for like 1.12 million, and we received that last year. And then we said, well, once the fiscal year's, end, we'll true it up and we'll ask for the balance, and that'll come in this year. So we still have like 1.28 million due to the unified budget
Uh-huh,
from last year.
From last fiscal year, which ended September 30th.
right.
Yeah. So I've asked that question. Of course, the county's been going through
I was gonna say, does it
staffing
roll
changes, and
over,
now,
or-
Stefan is coming
Yeah.
back.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that,
Which
that's
is
a good
great.
thing, yeah.
Mhm.
So he's familiar with that, and, I think they're,
So is the money
Les is gonna be very
there?
happy. What?
Is the money there?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
The money's there.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I'm not concerned about that until right now.
Okay. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sure it's there. But then, what, and David was part of this process, when we were looking at the budget request for fiscal year '22, we had a number that was like 16.1 million, but there was ARPA funds, there's like 3 million in ARPA funds that technically are due back to the TDT to reimburse for lost revenue. We don't know exactly what's going on with that, or when that will hit. Will it hit the 108 fund? That has a, if,
If.
we're not sure. But originally, when we budgeted, there was some money in there, and then they didn't want to deal with that, so they said, we'll take, my understanding is they took 1.6 out of that 5 million left
Yeah.
over to add to this year's budget, almost like that supplemental up front
Okay.
to get the 16.1, so our 65% was around $10 million for the unified budget.
Okay.
So what I don't know is what dollar amount are they attaching to each percent? So what is a percent worth? Is it worth 3 million? Is it 3.5? Is it 4? Because that's the budgeted amount, but the difference between the budget amount and the actual amount is what would still be technically owed to the unified budget.
Sure.
And I don't know that, because I can't figure it out from where the final numbers came in. Because the appropriation agreement we got, I'm like, that seems like a lot to put on the 5th cent. It was like 4.5 million or something like that, and I'm like, that seems higher than what we agreed to. So then I asked him to explain it, and then that bogged everything down. So I said, never mind, just, we gotta get things going, so if you wanna issue that $2 million check for the advance, then we can move things forward. So we still have to go back and have that question, and really probably wouldn't go anywhere now until Stefan's back.
Right.
In position.
When does he
and ready
come
to go.
back?
Soon?
I don't know when he started.
I thought he was already back.
Yeah,
but I-
it could be. Hey, I know he had to turn in his notice to the county, to the
City, yeah.
So that's one of those interesting things that we'll have to try to work through, as well, but, it
Okay.
technically could get lost in the mix, because the 5th cent wasn't planned for in the fiscal year '21 budget, it was an extra thing,
Right.
but this year it was part of the budget. Because they're
Right.
planning on the 5th cent all 12 months that we'll be collecting it, so we have to decide how much that is, and if that's how much we wanna
Well, this past year.
argue the point. But it's all about, you know, is there different ways to put money into reserves? I mean,
Right.
technically, you know, if at the end of the year, I've got, let's say $100,000 I don't spend, because we have to budget for certain things, whether they happen or not. So
Right.
even in payroll, we budget for like staff using the benefits. Because if someone does leave and a new person comes in and they start using the benefits, we kind of have to budget for that to be there. So in payroll, there's always a little bit left over because not everybody uses all of the benefits. But at the end of the year, if that, instead of rolling over, would go into the marketing reserve, I'd feel better about that than just having it roll over back into the 108 fund.
Right.
Now, that's not exactly maybe the best way to do it, but
But I think we could sit down at the end of the year and see hasn't been used and decide then. You know, if we don't need it,
So part of the budget, statutory requirement for the county is to take 5% of their total budget and put it aside.
Right.
It's a statutory holdback. In case they don't make the collections, they're hoping they don't miss it by 5%.
so the state is asking of TDC funds
Yes,
to
it's part of
that
the
5%.
statute that they have to,
Right.
the county has to pull 5% off of the top, skim 5% off the top and put it in an account, leave it in the account and don't allocate it out.
And that goes in 108,
It stays in 108.
okay?
It's just, if they say like, you know, we've got a $10 million budget, then $500,000 has to go into a reserve, and they can only allocate out the $9.5 million
Sure.
remaining. And so at the end of the year, what they did historically, up until the last couple of years, they allocated it to, between ACE and Visit Pensacola, 25% went to ACE and 75% went to Visit Pensacola. And that's what created Foo Fest and, you know, Vacation Artfully. And then the unified budget kind of trued up there. They changed, they created a memo of understanding so that Visit Pensacola, any allocation that goes to Visit Pensacola, in the appropriation to the unified budget is 75% to Visit Pensacola, 15.75% to ACE, and 9.25% to Pensacola Sports. And it didn't matter if it came at the beginning of the year or after the end of the year,
Or
after the
supplemental.
audit, whatever money was left over. Since that happened, the money, like the last 2 years, has just gone into 108.
So-
They're not allocating it back out.
So we could recommend that 500,000 that's a statutory, or whatever the number
Holdout,
is,
5%.
the holdout, the 5% holdout, go into reserves.
could do that.
To
Because you know
help-
what's gonna be
to-
there. As long as we hit the budget goal, the $500,000 will be there.
Yeah,
That money will be there.
And they're
Yeah.
always very conservative, like they wanted to do a 10 million again this year.
Yeah.
Last year we did 17.
right,
So-
right.
So that money, more than likely, unless we have some major issue again, is gonna be there at 5%.
And right now, we're off to a great start. I mean,
Yeah.
The
Oh, it should be
TDT
more than
collections
that,
Oh,
are
it should be way,
on average
5% of
20%
15,
up
5%
every month.
total collection.
Yeah. the total-
yeah.
And
yeah,
it's
Of whatever their total.
coming more
budget
from rate
was
than anything
this year.
else. I mean, our occupancy
Total
has been
budget or total
down,
collection?
according to Smith Travel, the last 2 months, maybe all 3, but
Well,
more supply.
right,
Because our hotels are back online compared to last year.
Right.
So supply is up, which is dropping occupancy down a little bit, but the rate is really, you know,
Hung-
the
it's hung
game.
in there.
And when you have rates that you maintain at that level, that's
Yeah.
gonna suppress some occupancy too.
Yeah.
So, but, yeah, I mean, we're
I
killing
told-
it by 20%.
I told our people, or the management company, this past year was such a good year, but where did the business come from? I mean, they don't really know, you know, they got all this business, and so how do you budget for next year when you don't really know how this all came about this year? But not my problem, so I was like, yeah. It is.
Tish asked the question about the holdback. Is it 5% of the budget or 5% of collections? Because those are two, like
Should be
Darren
collections.
said separately, those
Yeah.
are, those are.
Yeah.
Percent of budget is how
what they've
it's
been doing.
presented.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's how they present it.
So do they do that as the collection come in? I don't know. Because then it would be a higher amount, right?
Well, so what they do is they.
3% off
they-
of
yeah,
and
they-
5%?
So what they've done, like looking at the budgets and the expenditure reports, what they've done is off of the budget. because they've exceeded the budget each year and they hadn't gone back and taken more
Okay.
out.
Okay,
Because
So then
what they've
they're
done
not-
is just reallocated it anyway, so why take out
Right.
and then reallocate? And the 3%, they've never gone back and trued it up to add more to it to get to the 3%.
So there's still, county, that would be, Pam gets that, right, the
Correct, the
3%?
3%,
So the 3%, what was $300,000?
yeah.
Instead of,
When there was a
on
10
10 million, not on 17 million, so.
Correct,
right,
She
right,
missed a couple $100 there, theoretically,
yeah.
correct.
if they don't go back and true it up, okay.
But that would be I mean, if they've got those funds and they have them set aside, it would be a great opportunity to roll over to being reserves for the,
Doesn't hurt anybody, right? It's
It
not
doesn't-
taking money
right.
away from anybody, it hasn't already been allocated into the next fiscal
Right.
year. So, it's, and if there isn't, then you don't force it, let's say we're supposed to collect 10 and we collected 9.8. Well,
Right.
at that point, then, that 5% is not gonna be a full 5%, you could still roll that over, or just choose, hey, we're not gonna do that this year. Because
Exactly.
we didn't have the excess.
Well, and if you set a cap on what is the fund level going to be, if you said what we're gonna genuinely need is $5 million, just as a hypothetical number, for an emergency marketing fund, once you hit that 5 million, you don't have to keep putting money into it. It's
right,
5 million.
right.
Yeah.
And it just stays.
And it stays. So you hope you don't have an emergency ever, but you're planning for it, and if that happens once every 10 years and you're putting $500,000 to $750,000 into it every year, you've hit it before you.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
And that can be the way to continually fund it and replenish it if it's ever been used. And you hope you don't, if you have a catastrophe, and you have 5 million in there, maybe you only need 2.
Right.
You know,
But
you
you've
used to.
got whatever you
Yeah,
need.
well, and we had a pretty traumatic 2020.
Yeah.
And given that and everything that happened to us, I think it was less than $3 million that we had to cut, right? It was 2 something.
Right around three.
So if we had 3 set aside, that probably would fit the bill without
Right.
having to make traumatic
Right.
transitions to staffing and, I mean, we had to cut the grant program, we had to do a lot of stuff.
Sure.
Because we knew the next year, to be honest, from 20, what we ended up with after all the cuts, when we went into 21, it was even less. It was less than where we ended up in 20. So we took another
Right.
cut.
Yeah, it was another cut the second year.
Yeah.
So the amount that was cut from 20,
In 21 was
in the
less.
total allocation or appropriation for 20 was greater than 21's appropriation.
Of course, yes, that changed then because of the 5th cent.
Because of the fifth.
Yeah. And then and Visit Pensacola got some money from the CARES Act to do some specific marketing, so that was helpful.
Right.
Um,
Nace ended up canceling the program, Food Food Fest, and
Right.
continued to do Vacation Artfully, but it had those funds.
Right. Right.
So, you're right about when that pent-up demand, just unleashed us, starting in April and carrying us through summer. Right now, it could be similar in the sense that we don't know if international cruising or international travel is going to really increase that much, given the
Right.
fact that it's up and down, it's a yo-yo, and people need to make plans and commitments, and so we may be looking at another year
Absolutely.
of people coming to Florida, which is open and available, because the other things you just can't rely on.
Right.
Or
Right.
the requirements could change. All of a sudden, you have to quarantine that you didn't have to do before. And right now, those aren't things you have to necessarily worry about in Florida.
Right. The one thing that, and whether you like him or not, I know more and more people are happy with DeSantis because he did keep us open. He's not going to close us. And it's proven that stay open, our numbers were the same as the ones that were completely shut in. So I agree with you. I think Florida is going to benefit from.
I am so much happier being here in Florida than California.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that. Moved just at the right time.
Yeah, you really, at that time, you didn't think it was, I was gonna say. Yeah, you didn't really think that was,
that had to be scary.
when you walked into the,
Yeah, that was unique.
I have one other question.
Okay.
All right,
Yep.
these figures, the operating is 35%, the promo, the beach restoration and dredging East Pass, are those percentages of their overall budget, did they say?
Just percentage of that department's budget, yes.
The tourists.
Yeah, the tourism budget.
Percentages of the tourism, okay, thank you.
So when I think of promotional, I'm kind of thinking of operations as well. I mean, when we get our funds from the county, we have 3 buckets. So we have marketing, we have operations, and then we have personnel. So if we got an allocation of $1 million and it's 75%, $750,000, we would be using, as much of that as we could from marketing, but we'd also still be covering the staff
Right.
and, our operation costs. So
Right.
where they kind of broke it up between promotional and operational, that's not how we've done it
Right.
in the past.
Well, you
Same thing
gotta have
with-
somebody taking those marketing calls, and you gotta have, so you gotta.
Well, it's great to have all the research and all the tools, but
Right.
unless you've got someone to actually carry it out, it doesn't go very far. So, you still have to have some people.
Right.
Okay.
All right, well, what I'd like to do, for us to do, I think we now have a good handle on what our charge is. And if there's any more research, Darren, that you can get from anyone else,
I thought that Amber McClure started down this path too, and I thought she had received some information, that she had reached out herself.
oh, really?
She sent some stuff.
So she
to the
started,
TDC.
and I'm trying to think if,
Who is she?
Amber McClure,
She
Former,
was-
Manager, the budget,
OMB,
Office of Management Budget for the county.
Yeah.
She was the finance-
and now Stefan
that's who
is
Yeah.
coming back to fill that position.
And what's
She
Stefan's
left-
last name?
Hall?
Hall, yes.
Yeah. So Amber left
Where did
in
Amber
July.
go?
She went to Open Government, OpenGov.com, or whatever, the company that the county uses, one of its vendors. I
Oh,
forget what they
okay.
do. It's
I think it's
software.
OpenGov,
Yeah,
NeoGov or something.
something like
Is that
Oh,
the
okay.
website company?
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cool tool, yeah.
All right.
So, because she was, I thought, she had reached out to get some of this information, so I don't know where it is now. Don't think she forwarded anything to me on what she had found,
I don't think I
but that was
recall.
happening during the summer, because we were having these conversations.
Right.
What do you think she was checking on?
I think she was reaching out to peer counties, on the Panhandle at least, to get this kind of information.
Okay.
So,
I'll see what I can find. for you.
yeah.
Okay, that'd be
she
great.
might-
Yeah,
Do you remember
Does
seeing
that sound
anything,
familiar?
I
David?
remember seeing something, that's why I was just looking through my emails, see if I can find it. If I do, I'll
And
send
I'll,
it to Tina.
now that I've
Okay.
mentioned that, I will look too, but I don't
Yeah, I
think
don't
she
recall.
forwarded anything.
All right.
So is there other information, Darren, that we're able to collect from neighboring counties, or you got that from Okaloosa?
I just got that from Okaloosa. I know that, and I talked, I don't know if I got an email on this, I'll have to check, from Beth, what's Beth's last name, Gendler? She is the new CEO for Orange Beach Gulf Shores.
Oh, okay.
The CEO who'd been there for a long time, just resigned back like in December. So
Oh.
I think he had mentioned that they've got like a 10% type of reserve they have set up, but I will double back on that. I
Okay.
think she may have sent something to me.
All right, great. Because I think if we,
Because that's a little different, that's another state, and
Mm-hmm.
they're doing things a little bit differently, and they're a private nonprofit organization as well. And outside of Florida, most of them are.
Mm-hmm.
It's just interesting that Florida, as a state, has a lot of county government-based DMOs, or departments of the county.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not set up that way, Panama City's not set up that way. There's a number that aren't.
right,
But when you get outside of Florida, a lot of the DMOs are those 501c6s,
Yeah.
private nonprofits.
well, that way, if we have some of that, that will help us.
Yeah.
We have that even talking to the
If we can get it from both sides, that'd be great. I mean,
it'd be backup to talking to the county commissioners are making a recommendation, that this is in line with what others are doing, so they don't, think. But I love the fact that the reserve, the statutory reserve, to roll that over, because that's just money that's we got.
There.
All right, so what I suggest, and then I want each of you to kind of digest what we went through today, and then we come back to meet again and start throwing out some ideas, and maybe, if Stefan is here, when he gets on, I'd love to have, he knows everything about the budget. I mean, it's a real joy to have him coming back to the county, because he really does. And he knows where all the dollars are, and so we can talk to him. And I think he'd be a good one to have on hand. So, do you want to figure out when we want to meet again? Or is there, working with,
When's our next TDC meeting? February, right?
oh, it is?
Tuesday,
Yeah,
second Tuesday.
I get back at 10:30.
We don't need to agree.
Okay, I'll try to be here. Okay, I do. I'll be coming from Argentina, and I'll be a little rough, but I'll.
Shave your beard and come
Yeah,
over.
exactly. I'm like, well, okay,
Or not.
or not. Yeah, or not.
I like the beard.
Okay.
Like a beard lady.
Matter of fact, it's the second Tuesday of every other month.
Every other month.
Okay,
February,
got that.
April,
All right, I need to put those down.
August.
So
All right.
Shirley, I'm just, to recap in my head,
Sure.
our charge is to explore ways to fund this reserve account, some of which we discussed today, determine the amount we want to put in that reserve, and then also identify triggering events that would cause us to release that money, and then how that will be, whether the commission votes, how they vote on it, and then how it will then be allocated based on the economic impact that we are looking at. Is that kind of it in a nutshell?
Sort of, yeah, creating
The fund,
the fund.
how much we're gonna fund?
Right. The
How
amount.
much that fund will be, how it is funded,
Yes,
Yes.
replenished, if ever used, what the guardrails and use, like the specific use of those funds could be,
Mhm.
what triggers the use, and the authority of the
Okay.
county commission, like if there's a
The process.
recommendation.
Right.
So is
The
it
process to using
a
those
request
funds.
through the TDC that goes on to the Board of County
That's
Commissioners?
what
for
I would
approval?
think.
I would
Okay.
think so, and then
Yeah.
the question is it a majority or a supermajority?
Yeah.
Which, you know,
What is it now? It's only majority. Yeah.
and so your guardrails are much like what Darren was saying, whether it's beach renourishment or marketing or operations or dredging a pass. Those are the guardrails that you.
Well, the
For
guardrails could be a
example,
pandemic or,
No, I would, no, I think for what we're talking about, this specific fund is for a marketing fund.
Marketing,
To
okay.
Yeah.
Essentially go to the unified budget, because the other outside, if the other outside agencies, which there's like 4, have already been funded, then they're not gonna need these, they already have
Right.
their annual appropriation, it's
Okay.
generally coming out of the unified budget. So it would be to fund the unified budget's programs,
Okay,
whether
okay.
it's,
yeah.
whether
Okay.
Visit Pensacola, it's.
that's what I would like
Covers
to
Yeah,
say,
yeah.
that
That's-
that's pretty straightforward.
yeah,
But that's-
And then identify the unified budget as, is it Pensacola Sports?
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Yeah.
that's helpful.
Because it needs to be very specific
Yeah.
as to,
Yep.
um,
Yeah, and I would like the committee to make the recommendation also on this beach renourishment fund. So that's a separate bucket of money that
In
at least
fund
in
level.
this year, and if we're gonna the committee could recommend to the TDC that it budgets every year $500,000 to go into a restricted fund for beach renourishment to be used however often
when needed,
it's needed, yeah.
yeah.
Because generally they get the county can get matching funds from government.
Government, right,
State,
right.
federal,
Yeah.
For those sort of
agreed.
things,
Yeah.
yeah, for that, definitely.
Yeah, we don't dredge anything Actually, the county does dredge, but they're not using tourist development tax. They dredge out the beach.
We have,
Yeah. They haven't.
okay, yeah. Hadn't
They're
thought about
listening,
that.
they might
I
now.
know, I hadn't thought about that.
What are those other outside agencies that you say get funded, those 4 agencies?
It's the African American Heritage Society, the Sertoma, Five Flags, the
University of, UW, the.
Historic, try,
Trust.
Naval Aviation Museum.
and then doesn't the turtles, how does that,
So that's under the county's 35%.
oh,
Well,
okay,
that's all part of the 35%, because it's 60.
okay,
no,
Yeah,
60
that's right, because you're right, because 65% just goes to
Goes
the
to
unified,
Yeah.
typically, in that area.
So through, the county has a line item for county programs. I mean, they had a couple of line items in our budget. One was for special projects, and then another one was for, whatever. It was a marine resources
Right.
line.
right,
And that marine resources covers the turtles and
oh, the
the.
ATVs and,
Well, that's.
yeah,
But, yes, and the reefs.
Reefs,
The reef
okay.
programs.
yeah,
But then there's, the Bay Center's part of that 35%. It's like a whole, there's
Yeah.
several lists.
sure,
3% for the administration of the total program, up to 3%.
Right.
Not to exceed 3%.
That's outside of the 35% though, isn't it?
That's,
I think so.
so the 5% holdback and the 3% administrative fee are stripped, and then the rest is split 35-60.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, then let's plan to meet, and then I'm gonna see about getting,
You're doing
Stefan
great.
here.
Pulling all this, absorbing all this.
Yeah,
I don't know that I've absorbed it.
well, but I'm looking maybe around, and you'll know when the, county commissioners meet, because I don't wanna do it on a day that the county meets, so I guess not be on a Thursday. Well,
There's a couple of meetings coming up on Tuesdays, but I don't think it's anytime soon.
okay. Then what about, maybe Thursday, I'm sorry, Thursday the 17th, or the week, sometime the week of the 14th of February. And then that, hopefully Stefan can, it'll give him enough time to plan. So is there like,
What day did you say?
what about the 16th or the 17th?
There's a public forum in the morning on the 17th,
Okay,
and then a BCC meeting that morning. But we could probably get away with the afternoon if you wanted to keep 2 o'clock.
okay. Is that,
Supposed to be on a LEAP visit to Tallahassee.
Okay.
On Wednesday and Thursday.
all right,
Wednesday and Thursday, I'll probably be fine,
okay, all right.
Well,
Monday,
committee.
Monday
Well, that's all right.
is
Well,
wide
we'll
open.
just,
so. Unless you want me
yeah, no, we appreciate you being here if you can, but what about on the 15th?
I'm only available on the 18th.
Oh,
Don't
okay,
work around,
all right, the Friday, the 18th.
Friday, the 18th is open,
Okay,
and so is Monday, the 14th.
all right. How about Friday morning, maybe 10:30? Okay. Are you, Laura, does that work for you?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I did a thumbs up.
Oh, okay. That's
Yes,
good.
Friday will work,
All right.
10:30.
I'll double check that this room is available.
Okay.
and, if it's not, then I'll get back with you.
Okay, if it's not, we'll go,
We can go to the room behind.
right. All right, and then, will you let me know if Stefan, how to get in touch with him?
I certainly will.
That'd be great.
What time did you say?
10:30. Yeah, that's great. Well, good, and then, Darren, any
Yeah.
research that you get from, would be appreciated, or if y'all find out, what was her name?
Amber,
Amber. I was going to
Yeah,
call
I
Amy.
couldn't find it on my cell.
I'm gonna give it
Yeah.
out as well.
Okay, good. Yeah, and if you do find that, if you'll share that with everybody, that would be great, Gina. All right, well, I appreciate everybody being here and being part of this. We'll figure out what we can do.
Yeah, no, this is great.
Yeah, yeah,
Thank you
Much
for
needed.
well,
everybody.
It makes me a little nervous to think that there hasn't been anything set up like this.
it really does.
You know, talking about this gets me knots in my stomach.
You should have been here at our April meeting in 2020.
Really? Yeah, no, I
Oh,
couldn't
it
have
was
stood it. I
frightening.
couldn't have stood it. Mm-mm. Just hearing you talk about all this right now is giving me anxiety.
No, it was,
I just budgeting, you know, I'm just real, and we live in crazy times.
Well-
This is just crazy times, and so I think that's adding to it, but.
but this was an eye-opener. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
we probably, if we hadn't have gone through what we went through, we would not, I can't imagine anybody
Yes.
realizing that this is not a smart thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, before you think, they may have thought, we're all right, but this was an eye-opener. So it's the perfect time to be making a recommendation,
Absolutely.
so.
We had a rough 2020, imagine the folks in California,
Oh, yeah.
20 and 21.
And it
Oh,
hasn't
yeah.
gotten significantly
Oh, yeah.
better,
Right,
because
got
they're
better there.
still, I mean, their mask
imagine.
mandates and, with the schools and being indoors and all that still is in full force.
Yeah,
We still have a daughter that lives in San Francisco and one that lives in Palm Springs.
New York, too.
New York, yeah.
We got a lot of friends in California, they're like, man, we gotta move to
I
Florida.
know, well, that's
I
what,
like, stay over there.
I know.
You vote the way you do, stay over there.
Exactly, I know.
Your politics to Florida, do
Yeah, we
not
rub
like
off on it.
Yeah, no, but every time I'm somewhere and they say, where are you from? You say Florida, and they're, oh, I love your governor. You know, I mean, I wish I had some friends from Oregon and California and they were all like, you know, it's just crazy, so. we
But you know,
are-
if you want to go to California or New York, right now the room rates are
Yeah,
pretty
good, exactly.
There you go.
That's exactly right, you can get a, well. All right, well, good, well,
Good.
then we're adjourned.
Thank you, I'm
Thank
excited
you.
to be a part of this.
Well, appreciate it.
I really like this pen. I want
So
to
now
steal
where
it.
are you?
You can have it.
So now where are you?
Aw,
There we go.
That's awesome.
Oh, Cleo.
And